just jumping in here for a relatively short discussion, have some fun around a thread that I created in response to a thread that I then reposted recently that but not in the way I probably should have, and it's led to a little bit of confusion. So I thought I would do this video, have a little fun, dipping and diving in between classes and all of the great stuff that we have coming up here in Black Power Media. Shout out to the Remix Morning Show and all the remixers. Yes, indeed. Welcome back, Sugar Booger and everybody else. Reach out, tell a friend that we back again. All those good things. You all know what to do. You know how it works. Hit all the buttons, all the things, all the stuff. What's up? Peace, 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 peace to you, Alice, is as well. So let's just get into it. So this is a part that I didn't do well in either instance of the original one on Twitter that I did last year in response to and the one I just posted up on Instagram the other day. This is the actual origin and what I was initially responding to last year from Karik Salil had posted this, but it actually didn't start here. These look like these two were I think added. This is where I saw it starting, and it was described as the faculty staff of a magical HBCU, of a magical historically Black college or university. So I put all the links in the show notes, so you can take your time and look at them as but this is what was done initially, just a little bit to give you an idea. So they took a lot of famous Black celebrities and created these memes, which I thought were pretty good. It's not bad. It's not, it's cute. It's funny. It's a nice magical, as he said, it's a magical HBCU. The librarian, he's very patient, memorizes every student's name. This obviously we know who this is, but in this case, she teaches principles of magical law. Object of every male freshman's desire, fashion icon, stop it, I'm old enough to be your grandmother, so on and so forth. Teaches modern demonology and exorcism strategy. On the dean's shit list, gives the threatening homework. You don't know jack about fighting demons. University president, hates slackers and freshmen, stares disapprovingly, drives a flying Cadillac. So anyway, these are the, and I actually don't know who some of these people are. Like I'll check the chat in a second. Like I never, like I don't know who this woman is. Obviously we know who this woman is. This woman is, Jeffrey Wright, custodian, grumpy, rude, I don't know who this is. Teaches black magic, ritual religion, here teaches advanced transmutation, teaches astral projection. So anyway, this is what I was working. So when I saw this, I said, okay, that's cute. But it did get me to thinking, about my own experience, my own tenure, pun intended, as a university professor, and particularly approaching now my 17th year at an HBCU. So and ultimately why I've been promoting and encouraging this Not a Different World project. So please do go to iMixWhatILike.org and click this link. And if you are so inclined, if you've been a faculty, student, parent, staff member, with an experience with an HBCU, please check this out. There's a couple, really just one or two questions, and I'm asking you to tell your story. It's part of a longitudinal research project that I'm going to be working on probably for who knows how long. It's open-ended, so it just invites you to first to share whether or not the show Not a Different World influenced you, if you're a certain age, or maybe not influenced you to go to an HBCU. But ultimately, I'm just asking, what has your experience been with HBCUs? And admittedly, I'm looking to offer up some somewhat loving criticism that is of a space that promotes itself as pro-Black, inviting of Blackness, good for Black students, et cetera, and so forth. But doesn't always reach that standard, doesn't always live up to that standard. All right. So, okay. So my response, so again, my response to the magical HBCU is a more or less satirical look at, well, I should say a satirical look at a more or less real HBCU. What would they, what would these folks be doing at a real HBCU? So this is where I started. I didn't see the ones with Giancarlo Esposito and Blair Underwood, but this is what I thought where I started. So, and this, unfortunately for me, is almost a response to a very specific experience that I've had with one. But so anyway, as I described here, a former acting star who hates teaching and his students and is only there because he can't find regular work in Hollywood. Hates that he is at an HBCU and not at least at NYC Film School, cusses at his students and colleagues and cares nothing about tenure. So, and again, unfortunately, I'm not going to mention the name, and it's actually a composite of more than one experience, but there's one that I have in particular where I was very disappointed at this person's behavior and engagement with faculty and students. And again, because one of the problems that I think exists at HBCUs that is under discussed and not honestly, I think really talked enough about, is the fact that a lot of faculty, a lot of people that work at HBCUs are not there as a preference, as a first choice. And in this case, but because there are some lanes that open up at HBCUs that would not be open to them in other universities, they happily take it. And in this case, there were a couple people who have, significant careers outside of academia who are brought into academia because of their celebrity, their names, or their relationships to those in hiring positions. But they're not there because they're interested in Black students or teaching even in general. And in this one case I'm thinking of in particular, we even had words where initially at the first faculty meeting, I went over to him and I was, kind of in a fandom moment. I was like, welcome to the faculty. It's good to meet you and all this other kind of stuff. But even in that very first meeting, his attitude was very clear. The students are the problem. They don't care about education. Faculty aren't serious enough. They don't care. When I was at a white university, this was my experience, and I don't know why. And to me, it was just clear, that there was no real interest in teaching. It was, almost like and certainly teaching at an HBCU. And then we even ended up having words over that as well, where he ended up defending some very reactionary decisions being made by those who had hired him. And was doing so from a position of ignorance, not having been at the university long, having been given a special invitation, a special paycheck, a special relationship, and then use that position to condemn the rest of us as if we were the problem. That is the rest of the faculty. And then in extending from there, that the students were the problem. And my point is always that it starts with the structure, and is that if resources are distributed a little better, if faculty weren't forced to teach 4 courses every semester, if our salaries were more appropriately placed, you would get a better performance. It just naturally makes more room for people to do better work. But him coming in teaching only a couple of classes with a special salary and all this other stuff, he had a different understanding of what was going on there and didn't really appreciate. So anyway, so that's why this is why I put that for this one here. Moving on, here we have the librarian again, but in my version, he is a wasted genius presiding over a dwindling array of research database budget cuts, cares little because no one does real research there anyway, so he knows the library is ceremonial and is bothered to be bothered. Again, this is a composite of my experiences, not just at Morgan, but at several HBCUs, where, again, it's not that inviting dude. It's not, and in some cases is the wasted genius who is sort of housed away from everybody in the library. And I think with this understanding that the library isn't, the space for intense study and research, it's either social or not used at all. And it is oftentimes it does often feel like, or has at times felt like, not just from my own experience, but the reporting of students and colleagues, that engaging some of the folks in these spaces is not the pleasant experience that it should be, and hence bothered to be bothered. Here we have the head of a previously non-existent program funded sufficiently by Wall Street so as to obscure a total lack of academic production. All students love her because their interaction is always superficial and never involves a grade or accountability. So again, composite, critique of a number of different people, and so this is, and I'm glad, Comrade Kwame posted. So this was something that was misunderstood in my reposting this. These are not me being critical of these celebrities. So I'm not saying that in this instance, I'm not saying anything about the politics or the behavior of any of these people beyond. I'm just responding to the meme that was or the set of the thread that was initially created, where these famous folks were shaped or proposed as a fantasy HBCU, and I'm saying, well, this is what I'm suggesting is more likely the case. And this is, again, a composite of what I've seen in a number of different spaces, where at times, and this is not, again, sometimes even I'm hypercritical and overcritical there, and over focused on the negative. The reality is that a majority of my colleagues, in my experience, whether I've liked them or not, or whether they've liked me or not, are actually, I would say it's a majority, that are actually interested and dedicated to doing a good job in the classroom, and they want to teach Black students, even the people I don't like, and certainly the ones that hate me. I think in some cases they do have an honest interest in helping Black students and wanting to teach Black students, et cetera, and so forth. And a lot of that good work is admittedly sometimes overshadowed in my own focus by some of the more troubling, traumatic, and horrific experiences. But anyway, but this is something that I've seen happen on a number of occasions, that, again, a previously non-existent program that attracts funding from some outside, often Wall Street connected entity, because it allows for that kind of, that liberal symbolic promotion of Black people, but in that sort of, oh, look, they can do these interesting little things. They can do little performance things. They can do little trivia things. They can do, look at how cute they are, but nothing really connected to heavy research lifting, or what would I think is still appropriate to consider, substantive academic contribution. None of that is the purpose or the interest behind it all. It's like, let's fund something that can be shiny, that we can put on a tour, that we can, use to recruit students, and maybe more resources that corporations can use to clean up an image. Anyway, that's sort of what I had in mind when I, but and again, but and and I this has even been coached as a strategy in some cases, that all students love her because the interaction is always superficial and never involves a grade or accountability. That it is like when you don't have to when you don't impose a grade, when you don't have to demand heavy lifting from students, of course they're going to be more likely to like you and praise your work. Anyway, this is definitely something I relate to, and not only having experience on coming in as a younger faculty member, but something I see creeping up as a potential for me to become. The last radical of a bygone era who hasn't published much or in popular outlets, happy to be near retirement, having fought a good but losing fight, and will not be replaced. Uh, on a number of occasions, I've watched older faculty who have, again, they haven't hit those prominent academic heights in terms of publishing recognition, but who have been steadfast in doing that heavy lifting in the classroom, in the community, who are, again, truly committed to not only teaching Black students, but offering them sort of an introduction even into some of the brilliant radical, histories. Um, but they're not replaced. In fact, the hirings that come after them are often with the idea that we don't want to replace this person. Um, and then they do often have this attitude of, well, young brother, it's your turn. I did the best I could, and but I'm seeing that retirement. I'm out, and like I always imagine Keith David to be in real life, just have that kind of smooth, suave, cool kind of, you know, I'm down for the struggle. Uh, Most people might not know who I am, but I'm in these community streets and classroom streets, so to speak. But I'm also happy to be out, and I'm out and will not be replaced. Uh, and I think this is an ongoing problem throughout the HBCU community. As a university president, hyper proud of this fundraising ability, and having been invited to Trump's White House, wants to move the HBCU beyond a Black university, and loves neocolonialism. Now, this one might be as close to a critique of the real person as I might come to in this thread, because I kind of I kind of feel like this is where Morgan Freeman finds himself in real life. Um, but yeah, we saw it during Trump's presidency when he invited all the HBCU presidents that he could get there, and whether they liked him or not, whether they believed him or not, we're happy to get that photo shoot. That's recruitment. That's fundraising. That's positioning myself for my next gig. All of those things. And yeah, they that neo-colonial relationship works for them. Where else would, I mean, again, particularly for the public universities, look at some of these salaries. Where else would folks make this kind of money? So if you got to, shake hands with a governor and a mayor and a this and a that, and get to the Trump White House, and especially if he's going to drop some more money, so be it. And then there has been, in some cases, this discussion and some concern around the discussion of how do HBCUs survive and compete when more options are available to attract Black students, and the traditional role of the HBCU is seen as dwindling. So there is this discussion of expanding the target audience for who will come to the university. But it was interesting. I noted that when Morgan and the state of Maryland was having its battle over University of Maryland duplicating programs that would have previously, in decades past, sent white students to Morgan State for these particular programs, thereby increasing some funding opportunities for the university, et cetera. I saw that it was noted that there were more white students at Morgan in the 70s than there are now, in part because they had to go there to get some of these special programs that weren't duplicated elsewhere in the Maryland system. So on some level, it may not be seen by some presidents that it's a walking away from history, but sort of a return historically to having more white students be there for funding, et cetera, and so on and so forth. So, but again, part of my issue with, and why I'm doing this wanting to do this project, is because there is the promoted image of what the HBCU is supposed to be, who it's for, and then there are these neo-colonial contradictions that, in all fairness, presidents are challenged with, because it's not enough to not grow. Why couldn't, for instance, a university stay at 3 to 5,000 students strong and just stay there and give those 3 to 5,000 students everything and give the faculty that work there everything, as opposed to constantly trying to expand, constantly trying to grow, which of course in this context means more is demanded of faculty with fewer pay, more classes, etc. More is walked away from or different from what is the projected symbol or image of what the university is supposed to do and who it's there to serve. But it's, oh wow, is this true? Lincoln is 51% white now? Wow. Okay. That's interesting. But at the same time, you know, the other option is, of course, to close, which, you know, I don't know. Here Denzel for me is the choir director. Who's always smiling because the world loves and pays well for HBCUs depicted exclusively for their step shows, marching bands, and Negro spirituals. And this is definitely a pet peeve of mine over my time at Morgan, not just with Morgan, but I am constantly frustrated at how HBCUs are promoted by their marching bands, homecoming football, step shows, and choirs. Not that, you know, I love all of it. It's all important parts of the experience. In fact, I was just talking to my daughters who are slowly creeping towards that college age, that one of the best parts of being in a Black university environment are the step shows, are the marching bands, are the sort of Black cultural pieces of it. But at the same time, that is almost the exclusive, it feels to me, presentation and promotion of HBCUs. And what Morgan, I think, is known more about internationally than anything else is its choir. Though this is not a specific reference to Morgan or its choir or choir director. It is just sort of a composite of what I keep seeing happen in the HBCU space, that it's, you know, we're not talking about, you know, the latest, I don't know, whatever, more substantive and academic production. We're not talking about that component as much. It seems like, it feels like. So again, that's why this is a satirical look. This one is, I don't know who this sister is in real life. So I'm happy to look in the chat to get checked on or clarified on that, or, you know, explained or told. But this is what she evoked, or the picture in the original thread evoked from me, that this is the new hire, the genius, hyper motivated, loves Black people, teaches them well, and is just everything professor. But she's soon to be hired by a PWI or predominantly white institution who will pay her twice as much to teach half the classes, allowing her to be even more valuable to a smaller group of Black students. And again, this is one of my biggest pet peeves in my experience, and something I've seen almost endlessly. And it is, I think, if I think about it, more often a woman than it has been a man. That is the new hire who comes in sharp, you know, like I'm saying, you know, is everything, dedicated, skilled, productive, but can't be kept unless she, at a very early part of her career that is on the rise, makes a decision that I don't think anyone should have to make, which is to largely abandon your academic interests, your publication interests, your public intellectual interests and capability, and make them, you know, and sublimate them, if they exist at all, to, again, a 4-course load or more teaching load. And again, I cannot stress this enough. In the academic community, when you have 4 classes a semester, in addition to committee meetings, especially if you need to make tenure, especially if you're advising students, especially when you are just a popular faculty member who students want to talk to, who look for you, even when you don't teach their classes. these are the faculty you would want to encourage to exist. But if you're constantly having, and I've watched this, I've had on some level to do this myself, but I've certainly watched this in other people, particularly with women who I think have gone on, as far as I'm aware. Again, they're not, in some cases, not the radicals that I'm always looking for, but they have gone on to these kind of not pop culture, but more publicly popular intellectual scholars, and who have done some uh well, I would say for them, great work. And I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to diminish. I'm just saying politically in their space is great work. It's not, you know, for some of us politically where we would want, but that's irrelevant. For the university, it should be what I would think they would want to encourage. But when you have to watch faculty tell students in the hallway who who just want to gather to talk to the faculty member, not petitioning for a grade or a hookup or whatever, but who are just saying, look, I heard something interesting. Or the best part is when students you do not teach come to you and say, I heard about you from another student. I just want to rap with you for a few minutes about X, Y, and Z. That is, I'm telling you, when I've beamed with pride, that's it. Because that's the students who tell other students to talk to a faculty member outside of class, outside of a grade situation. That is the best. But when you have to, and you watch other faculty tell them, I can't, I don't have time, I gotta go, I got a class, I got an advisement session, I gotta sit in on another meeting, it's so demoralizing. My favorite moments as a student, sitting in my favorite professor's offices way after class, bringing my lunch, walking with them. I mean, that was, one of my issues with, one of the reasons why I was so personally whatever with Dr. Carr. I used to go to Howard University and just catch dude walking from one building to the next just to rap and hear him rap with other people. That's how much I was like, this dude is sharp. But to think that even in those moments, it was a quick walk, because he was even having to say, look, I don't have time. I teach at Howard University. So to think that when I was at Frostburg with a smaller Black community in a smaller, mostly white university, we had time. The faculty there had time to sit with us. When Dr. Turner in grad school showed up and did that one ceremonial drink half a beer with us in our buddy's apartment after, to talk with it, those are the most incredible moments. And to think how many of those moments get lost because faculty just don't have time or energy. And then on top of that, you're still expected to publish, to participate in conferences that aren't funded, by the way, often enough, or if enough. Um, you don't have time. So what happens is, I've seen it. I can't even count how many times it's happened. This sister, one semester, maybe two, and she's out because she sees immediately. Not only do I not have time to do my work, but it's not appreciated here. I'm not paid, and then I'm not paid as well. I can literally get twice the pay to teach half the classes. And as I said here, have a more valuable contribution to a smaller group of Black people. So when we often hear from people who are not familiar with the situation, how can Black people not teach at HBCUs? How can they not care about their community? I would argue that they have more impact in a more substantive positive impact on the smaller groups of Black students they meet in PWIs than they do among larger pools of Black students at HBCUs, just because of that structural issue right there alone. And again, I think a lot of it could be fixed internally with a better redistribution, a better distribution of what admittedly are fewer resources at the university than in white universities. On the way to advocating for more funding for the university, I think salaries need to be at the top, need to be reduced, spread out, course reductions, and you get better faculty, better production, better student experiences, and maybe it would even lead to more money down the line because more students would come knowing they're going to get this fabulously, intense and rich experience. I don't know. That's just so. Anyway, this one is a particular thing for me right here because I've seen this happen over, and it is mostly women. I think. And then here's that same sister 20 years later, absent the move to the PWI. She will write her one meaningful publication after retirement. Her student evals or evaluations now largely contain complaints about her temperament and low energy. Again, something I've seen happen all the time. And the older I get and the more time I spend there, the more obviously biased in favor of this sister than I would have been some years ago. But in other words, I get it. I get it. That window. I do think there is that window where you are, for me, it's like you're mid to late 20s, before the marriage, before the children, and you got the degree, you're out, you're like, and it's super productive, super high energy, super ready to go, but you get saddled with the 4 classes, you get saddled with all the micro traumas that you suffer over time. And the more I'm learning, even with some of the lawsuits going on right now, the unequal pay for women, the abusive, relationships that women often suffer. And then, 20 years later, you didn't take that jump to the PWI. You didn't get that, you didn't hit that window and write that book at that moment and have it hit heavy. So you wait. And as was warned, I remember, man, Dr. Manifa Love Asante, shout out to her forever. She told me when I first got there at Morgan, this is what you need to do to make it. This is what you need to do to sustain yourself. And then she told me, watch out for that weight. Watch out for that weight gain. And sure enough, I was like, nah. And I remember, in fact, the one meeting we had, where she was warning me about that. I was eating this big bowl of Chinese food for lunch. And I remember as I put the fork in my mouth, I was like, it's not, I got this. That's not going to happen to me. And sure enough, it did. 10 years later, umpteen pounds later. But anyway, but I've seen this happen too. Then this sister retires, and then she does something, or maybe not retire, but they'll move on and take like a less stressful position at lower pay at another local university, and then they still do their more meaningful work and all that other kind of stuff. But the students that they get at the end of their career or at that moment, they're getting a different version of them. And of course, the students, it's not their fault, but they don't see her at the beginning, or me or others at the beginning. They see someone, who's been beaten down for a long time, and who's still, and again, 4 classes a semester every semester for me now, with 1 or 2 exceptions, going on, what is this, 17 years just at Morgan. That's a lot, man. That's just a lot. It's just a lot. It's too much. The new upper level administrative hire, her smile, friendly demeanor, and constant biblical references are performative veneers meant to deflect criticism of her bosses. And I could have even written criticism of her junior faculty. And this person I was thinking of, she's no longer with Morgan. But she breezed in, got the big check, constant biblical references, that, and that's why I'm always like, every time I start hearing people quote the Bible to me, I'm like, I start reaching for my wallet, like, and start looking for the exit, the escape route. Anyway. But yeah, it's almost performative. It's like, it's the assumption within the Black community. We're all believers. We're all in church. So, all the references I make, you'll understand. And then it's like a way to deflect, because how can you accuse someone of being shady if they're quoting the Bible? Now this is definitely, this more than any of them, this is definitely a direct reference to somebody for real that I encountered and debated. The head of political science, proudly from wherever Black Americans are not, wishes he was at Oxford or the London School of Economics. And I debated this dude years ago at Morgan, from one of the saints, the islands, one of the saints. And he sat up there during a convocation in front of the whole university and said that Black Americans are predisposed to crime and criminal activity because they are culturally deformed, and we in the Caribbean have a better culture and experienced slavery differently and responded better, and that's why you don't see us all locked up. So so I was like, hold up. I was like, what? So we had this debate. He wouldn't let me record it. I came with all this research, had everything ready to go, and he had no research, and in fact said he didn't need to do research because he could just observe. And I remember saying, but you're the head of political science at a university and arguing in a debate that you don't need research because all you have to do is observe. I said, that is the most anti-intellectual, academic, most disingenuous thing I've ever heard in my life. But all I really remember from the aftermath is that the several students that we had in common said they thought that I was the problem because that I was too hostile, too angry in the debate. And I was like, and I was like, I got a right to be hostile. My people been persecuted. But I was like, how you gonna tell me I'm being hostile? This dude just said, anyway. So yeah, I was thinking this dude, and then, but the other thing, and the reason I put the reference to Oxford in there is that I remember him saying, he asked if he used as one of his self-referenced citations, in other words, self-referencing his own publication, he used an actual letter to the editor he wrote, the Financial Times. So he actually said, as I wrote in the Financial Times, da 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 da. But when you look up the citation, it's literally a letter to the editor, or like a comment, to the editor on the finance. But he promoted it as if it had been a commissioned or published article. It's shameful. It's shameful. I don't think he's there anymore, but it was shameful. That's who I was definitely thinking of him in that one. So I'll beg forgiveness from the universe if this is somehow unfair beyond my personal experience. But and it is. We do have to be real. I think there are problems of anti-soda sentiments in these HBCU spaces. And internally, even, and this is not at Morgan that I'm getting this from, but throughout HBCUs, there is this underspoken issue of and claim, even by some, and views by some, that there are these sort of cabal sounds, whatever, but there are these collectives of Africans from various parts of the diaspora who ascend to position, who use their position to help and benefit one another, and often enough against Black American faculty. That part I haven't experienced or seen necessarily, but it is an issue that my own experience and some others certainly suggest that we have some anti-soda issues, some issues with Pan-Africanism to continue to contend with, and class, by the way. Yeah. But anyway, I don't know who this sister is either. So forgive me for that. But she definitely reminds me of the person I described here, from the Black community where her HBCU is located, fiercely loyal to her community university, great grant writer, and most radical acts are voting for Obama, Hillary Clinton, and then Biden. So I know a lot of these sisters here. I've met a lot of these sisters and brothers for that matter. But in terms of this pictures, what who again, uh, um, I don't. They're certainly not enemies. They're not bad people. They're and as I said at the beginning, highly committed to the community, highly committed to the university, highly committed to their students, and are great at their jobs. Even they're great faculty, but they're not radical. That's all. Um, yes, it is. It is. But this is sort of my point, B. More Akuma. This is exactly my point about the broader project of not a different world. That HBCUs are promoted often as the antithesis to the world. But they often replicate the problems in the world, and that's sort of the point I'm getting at. And where I would like to see them become more of microcosmic examples of a world we need to be creating. There's too much of the replication. So yeah, but that's actually my point. And again, too, I probably could have added that this sister ends up probably getting burnt out too, if she stays her career there. Because if aspirations certainly ever, move beyond the immediate local community, or maybe wanting better pay or whatever, you just can't stay. Definitely have experienced this. The admin office manager hired specifically to intimidate faculty not to make requests for even one single thing. And I admit I forgot this sister's name, but I stereotypically would suspect that, like, I think of her personality as fitting that. Like, don't even come in here. You need to schedule a meeting. I do it elsewhere. Send a memo, send an email, sign up on the sheet outside the door. You're here to pick up your package. I'm a mean mug you for a few minutes and make you wait for me to find it. And a couple of years ago, it was reported to faculty that the office manager was hired and was told that she works for the dean, not the faculty. So don't interfere with her. Anyway. Here we go. Trying to start her HBCU's first Black Studies program. Writes books on race and for major newspapers, which upsets admin, who invariably ignores and suppresses her work so as not to publicly be associated with it. Yeah, this is a composite of a number of women in particular. That again, it's that's interesting. Am I catching a theme that I didn't think of overtly initially? Anyway, like all universities, HBCUs want, on the one hand, they want public recognition for their faculty. They want certain public notoriety to occur. But if your notoriety is attached to race-specific critique, I don't think that's what's hot. It's like HBCUs want to be the Black space, but not the Black radical space that critiques what happens to Black people outside of that space. And again, it's that neocolonial relationship. I mean, it is, again, if you are, even if I were president of an HBCU, either we would exist with the kind of what I'm talking about, a microcosm of what could be, where we wildly redistribute what little resources we get, which would dwindle, or I would have to, make concessions. And one of those concessions would be you don't want to walk into a meeting with a potential funding source and have the first thing out their mouth be a reference to some, major article or research project or book or documentary or whatever that is critical of the work that those funders do or are associated with or believe in. So yeah. And I've even been in spaces where like I remember this former dean, and this is my thing. He had just fired. I'll never forget this. He had just, well, technically he just didn't renew the contract, but it's really a firing. He just lets my man, Dr. Burroughs, go. And within like a day or two, stands up in front of a press conference promoting his school and claims credit for our work by saying we have some of the leading scholars of Malcolm X's history in our schools. So in other words, we'll take credit for it at this moment, but we're really getting rid of that underneath. We don't want that there. But anyway, and here we go. I think this is the end. I think this is the last one. Erykah Badu pictured here, but not, this is not a critique of Erykah, as I think people, or a few people thought I was doing. I'm not, this is not personal to the people pictured. But here she teaches film and ethnomusicology, is well liked and famous, presents revolution as an aesthetic, and is promoted and well paid for this, precisely this level of emptiness. This is probably less of a composite than I would want to admit, but and specific to a man. But in general, I think this kind of stuff happens all the time. And I am kind of critical of that whole kind of thing. Like, you know, like the revolution is in the symbols. The revolution is in between the lines and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, but it's the stuff that's the stuff that is loved. You know, like if you're going to talk about revolution or radicalism or world change, it's got to be, as a, you know, aesthetic. It's got to be in the sounds and in the ether, in the air, in between the line. It can't be, you know. Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. You might be right, Ricky. And this might be why I was inspired to think this way in terms of a picture of Erykah. But yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It's like, you're right. I mean, she does kind of, it's like, yeah, it's like, and then people can bring her around and be like, oh, she's so deep. You know, but anyway, so that was it. That was it. Again, that was what I was saying here in response to the original. This is cute. Now wait for me to write the correction with what these captions would actually read at today's real HBCUs. So that's it, everybody. Just wanted to clarify what I was unclear about and reposting them. Have a little bit of fun with it. It's all satire. It's all love. It's all love. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.